President and Director of Archer Cleantech, Ron Loudoun, is a successful business strategist with more than 25 years' experience in real estate and as a business administrator. He has maintained a long-standing interest in both communicating the need for and sourcing new technologies and methods for conscious-minded development and growth. This led him several years ago into the renewable energy space and to founding Archer Cleantech. Welcome to Biz 101, Ron.
Thank you for having me, Randy.
Tell me a little bit about, I know you have a pretty interesting background, Ron, so share with me a little bit about your personal history.
Oh, I went to BCIT in 1981 for marketing and administration, and took a real estate option, got into real estate years and years ago. Got involved in commercial developments. Went to Vancouver Film School.
Really?
Yeah. For a couple of years in Vancouver, built a studio there in Vancouver and made a couple of feature films. Got into that a little bit, it was fun. And since that time, during the whole time, I've always been kind of concerned about the environment and, you know, what we're doing to the planet and where things are going there. So I've always kind of kept my finger on the pulse of, you know, industries within that space.
So you've gone into the clean energy business, and you don't have any particular technology or any particular focus. You're basically a development company?
At that time, starting to look at the space, it was a natural that solutions, you know, were necessary, and I think we were at the very beginning of things there. You know, you can't run a country sustainably paying, you know, 15, 20, 25 cents a kilowatt for power. So, you know, it was just a natural that something had to be done about that, or a solution had to be created.
So you went to the places where the power is expensive?
Yeah, I mean, our first trip was down to Brazil, and Brazil's got rolling brownouts. They've got 204 million people, and a tremendous energy problem there, and that was one of the first places we looked at. And one of the other places, a good example would be Jamaica. Jamaica is, you know, their main industry is tourism. All the tourists are no longer going to Jamaica. They're going to Pura Vida, Costa Rica, or where they do organic farming in Cuba. And Jamaica is losing its business because they're not paying attention to, you know, what everybody is concerned about, which is, you know, looking after the environment. Jamaica, in fact, the entire island runs off a diesel barge parked in Kingston Bay.
Really?
That's attached to the main generating station, and they pay, I think, 27 to 35 cents a kilowatt for power. And I mean, here we're, you know, 4 to 6 cents wholesale for power. So that's literally from the perspective of people looking to go there for a holiday, their main industry, and from the economic side, killing the island.
So you're saying that tourists are actually steering away from countries that are not
Absolutely.
embracing green energy?
Absolutely. Environmental stewardship is in mainstream consciousness right now. 20 years ago, for instance, if you thought about doing yoga or making a healthy shake, you were a hippie. Now everybody's concerned with it, and that's mainstream consciousness. So it's really in the public mind.
So that's what you mean when you say conscious business?
Yes, exactly.
So, so you're an entrepreneur from the real estate sector. You've been in the movie business. So you just decide one day, I'm going to get into the clean energy business.
Yeah, not that quickly, but at the time there was all the indications were that there was going to be some attention given to that space. Some of the majors were, you know, studying new technologies, and that's a good indication of where things are going.
So how long ago was that? Because I consider Archer Cleantech almost a startup, but actually it's been going for a while.
Yeah, we started work on that, I think, 7 years ago.
And so tell me the story.
It's really still the beginning, the very beginning of a very large long-term space right now. So it's quite exciting. The beginning of it was really because everybody was talking about all the new technologies now, solar panels and, you know, wind turbines, they were all being talked about as solutions, and so it's not hard to see the writing on the wall when the majors, General Electric is designing turbines. You know that the big players are going to move into that industry. They always want to be ahead of it. They move slowly, but all of those indications were in place.
So what did you do? I mean, so you're an individual entrepreneur. What did you do? Like, and I don't want this to be like a tutorial for some entrepreneur to get into the green energy space, but it is a fascinating question. Like, you're not in the space. So what did you do?
Yeah, you wanna get involved with people that know the space. People, there's association. I think one of the first meetings we attended in Vancouver was the Wind Association meeting. And there's, BC's a great place. There was major projects going on up north, and we need a lot more power for all of those projects. And the Wind Association meeting is a collection of all those people looking for solutions. And you start meeting people in the industry. And then we attended another event in Calgary, and we did that for about 24 months solid. And, what was clear to us is the opportunities that presented themselves were really unserved markets, where the margins were a great deal larger as well, and places that people don't necessarily, or the big players don't necessarily want to go.
Meaning some of these
Jamaica's a great example again.
Jamaica.
So some of the Caribbean islands and South Pacific islands, places like that.
So Ron, tell me more about Jamaica.
When I talked about if you were a factory and you wanted to set up to address a market in the Caribbean, Jamaica is a major location. It's got the deep port. All of the ships that come through the Panama Canal stop there. And would you go to Jamaica? Well, here's the consideration for an industry setting up there. If your power is 25 to 35 cents a kilowatt, are you going to go there?
No.
You can't afford to. You can go to a country very near there and get power for 10, 12 cents a kilowatt. So that's a business killer. Not only do the tourists look for another island that isn't environmentally, unconscious, the industries also go there and look for places that they can run an affordable business. And that's what happens to these countries when they do not have a target for renewables or replace their existing systems with renewable energy.
So let's talk about investing in a clean energy company, because obviously it's, there's a lot of excitement about blockchain.
Sure.
and about, the cannabis space. We did a special show on the cannabis space. You're involved in the cannabis space peripherally. But, this is not a fad.
No.
This is a trend.
Sure, yeah. The cryptos and the blockchains and the most recently the cannabis space, which I still do like, because there's some benefits to humanity. It's a natural plant and this and that. But the nature of those businesses, like many other businesses, you buy something, you sell it, and then your business cycle is over. The beauty and I think the attractiveness to the markets of the renewable energy space is you've got a project with a 25-year PPA and it's residual revenue streams, which the financial markets absolutely love. You've got a dependable, long-term residual revenue stream based on a PPA that's backed by a government or a large entity.
And when you say PPA, just what do you mean by that?
Power purchase agreement.
So walk us through, give us an example of one of your projects and how you put it together and how you finance it and the whole thing.
Yeah. If you go to an area that's underserved and we call that a greenfield opportunity, a new opportunity, and the first thing you do is you look for a resource, whether it's a wind or a solar resource. You put up a Met tower and maybe measure the height, direction, style of wind for at least a year, and assess that resource, assess the market dynamics, whether it's a floating market or a fixed market, the power price in that market, for instance, and then you do a financial model on it, which is like you do on any other business, and it has to be profitable. A while back, the challenge in the industry was really with the financing. if you wanted to finance this new industry, the renewable energy industry with a wind farm or solar farm, not a lot of banks would finance that. Not a lot of people, the few that would want interest rates that were double or triple what would normally be,
Because it's there's a lot of risk, perceived risk.
That's right.
Around a new industry.
Absolutely, yeah. So we were faced with that at that time. So, I think along the way what we've done is, with Archer, is really brought some very experienced and quality people to the table to be involved. And the interesting thing about Archer and the space that is within the space is that it's a project generator. And that really is the best value lift in the development cycle. So for instance, a greenfield opportunity would be maybe there's a farmer's field out in Saskatchewan that has a great wind resource and you've measured it and it's very close to a substation for connection, which is affordable. And the power in the little town next to it, they have a factory there and they're short on power and they want stability and they're willing to pay a little bit more or a decent price for it and sign a power purchase agreement or a long-term contract. So those circumstances lend themselves to a quality project. The value of finding a farmer's field that you can lease very inexpensively and the cost of doing the environmentals and the wind studies and everything, the value lift in that first stage, you go from it's much like real estate. Let me use that as an example that everybody could relate to. So you have a field that you're going to buy, it's 10 acres, but you take and you rezone that field to 100 condo units. Now that field happens to be worth, instead of $250,000, it's worth $2.5 million.
Right.
It's very much the same in the renewable energy space. So you find a greenfield opportunity, you do the environmentals, you do the wind studies or solar studies, and make sure you can get connection and talk to the local end users and put that all together. And now you've got a project that's gone from here in value to here. And you're also in a position at that stage now to either decide to sell off that project, find a joint venture partner, or finance it yourself and develop it and create a nice long-term residual revenue stream and tremendous value out of that. And sorry, back to your cannabis and blockchain, and I mean that's this is 25 years of residual revenue. It's so valuable and so attractive to the financial markets. You want to do everything you can to develop that project out fully.
But the financial markets become way more interested in it when it's been de-risked, that it's already all put together. Absolutely. They don't want to do any of the heavy lifting.
Absolutely. And we've got some incredible people on the Archer team, and people make a successful company. So we're very fortunate to have some people attracted to the model that we've presented and come along with it. So
it's 7 years or so in the making, and yet it's just getting off the ground. So you're still a private company. You may have some plans to go public. Give me sort of a snapshot of where you're at right now and where you're going.
Well, you don't want to serve the wine before it's time, of course. So Archer is really matured. The team is functioning very well. We've consolidated our operations in Calgary. It's a great spot to do that with the rest of the industry there. It's a good time to take that next step. I think we're a pretty girl at a dance. I think people that understand business and the markets, you really want to look for something that's long-term and sustainable and secure. So we represent a nice secure investment in the financial markets right now.
So and we're just about out of time, but I want to ask you just briefly about, you've set up your own finance company as a wholly owned subsidiary of Archer. What's that all about?
Yeah, that started back when we saw that there was challenges in financing projects cost effectively. So at the time, the bond market, of course, is 1,000 times bigger than the equity market. So at the time we thought, well, that's, if we can do something unique here, and a gentleman that we're associated with was in the bond market. And I said, well, why don't we start doing bonds for clean energy, renewable energy projects? Why don't we float a bond? I mean, bonds go out at very low interest rates. The bond market itself, the bond buyers are into preserving capital. They're not aggressive investors. They're in, and we did something unique with it, which is insured the bond, which means a buyer of the bond now has a more secure investment because it's insured by one of the major, insurers like Aon or BMI or Lloyd's. So it's an attractive investment opportunity for them as a bond buyer, but it's also a way for them, which a lot of people are, like I say, it's part of their consciousness now. It's a way for them to invest in clean energy, something green, something positive, So
yeah, so I mean, my understanding is that there's billions and billions of dollars on the sidelines around the world of people that would, whether it's private equity funds, family offices, ultra high net worth, that want to invest in green energy.
Absolutely.
But they're not going to turn around and invest in little Archer Cleantech because they don't want to take too much risk.
Well, they're not risk. They have no risk tolerance. So presenting a debt instrument like a reinsured bond or an insured bond to them is a fantastic way for them to add green to their portfolio and mitigate any risk.
So by you setting that up, obviously that's going to be a great source of capital for Archer. But in the meantime, there's still the opportunity to invest in this private company. Yeah,
our objective is, I think we're mature, and I think our project slate is extraordinary. We've really done a fantastic job of sourcing unique and highly potentially profitable projects in unique regions, which is something that nobody's really done. And our goal is to become a mid-level power producer, and that's new to the market, and I think will be very, it'll be a very good opportunity for people at this stage, and we're ready to take that step.
Ron Loudoun, so great to have you here, and I got a feeling that we're going to be talking a few years from now about this mega company that grew out of Alberta that's doing green energy all over the world. Congratulations.
Thanks for having me.
Thank you.
Cheers.
You bet.